She has her fourth novel under her pen name. All the fiction is under her pen name, and that's Susannah Marren. Susan is a gender studies expert. She teaches at Marymount Manhattan College, and she studies relationships between and among women, primarily, she studies women in society. Let's put it that way. Some of her nonfiction topics are toxic friends, lying, women of divorce, rivalry. That book is called Tripping the Prom Queen, second wives, and as you know, women cheating. So A Passion for More is one of the books we're going to be discussing tonight, and you can buy a copy if you want, if you'd like. And Maribelle's Shadow is her newest novel. So, Susan, we're really here to talk about first A Passion for More, why women cheat. And you, from what I gather, they cheat more than we think they cheat. We think about men cheating.
I think everyone in the room who's female gets it. And I think that first of all, let me say this is a 30-year study. And so I began it when I was a very young writer, and it was the first book that came out. And in the 90s, it's still incendiary, but it was really, people were just shocked that I was doing this study. Now, what made me want to do it? Well, I've always been a writer, and I was taking the commuter train to the city in about 1991, and I was eavesdropping, and there were women sitting together, about 5 women right behind me, and they were very young, and one of them was getting married in like 2 weeks, and she was telling everyone that she was still seeing her old boyfriend. So I was going into the city to see friends for a birthday lunch, and everyone at lunch was like whispering about, oh, someone had a friend or a cousin who was having an affair. So I wondered if it was a trend or a phenomenon. And my lifelong work has been on how women are positioned in contemporary American society. Why do we wear the faces we wear versus how we really feel? What is the price of being the good girl? Why is it so hard for women to really own their feelings? Why is it so hard to have voice and agency? So I thought this was a really good place to start. And it was so long ago that I actually called up cousins and friends around the country and asked them to put ads in like Women's Wise. And I advertised in newspapers. I put a hotline into my home because I wanted to guarantee anonymity, and I wanted the women to change all identifying characteristics, which has gone on for 30 years. So if you were 30, you'd say you were 29, or if you had 3 children, maybe you would say 2. But in any case, where did you live? You live in Boston. You say you live in Detroit. But what was authentic and exactly the truth was how women would navigate these affairs and still stay in their marriages. So by the time I finished this study, I was talking to women who were in long-standing monogamous relationships as well. But what's really interesting is in the first issue of this, I spoke with women between the ages of, say, 30 and about 55, 60. But when I finished this and this new issue is coming out, I talked to very young women, to women in their 80s. And I think that's really reflective of how things have changed for women. And for all of my nonfiction, for every title, it's been very important to me that I speak to a diverse group of women. So we're talking about, different levels of education, social strata, religion, race, ethnicity, from suburbs, from rural areas, from cities, really looking at how women feel. And for every nonfiction book that I've written, not just A Passion for More, I am looking at emotional issues for women. So if you're unhappy with your husband, or your daughter or granddaughter is difficult, or you hate your mother-in-law, I did a whole study on mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law. It really doesn't matter if you graduated high school or you have an MBA from Harvard. It really doesn't matter. And in times of great need in America, which we've seen, like the downturn in 2008, and of course now and during COVID, I was hearing women who were actually more invested in an affair because there was so much turmoil and disappointment in their lives. And I'm not just talking about a physical affair.
Well, tell us why
let's talk-
women have affairs.
So based on my study and in the book, women have affairs for 4 different reasons. So they do it for self-esteem, they do it for sex.
Okay,
which
tell
these
them
are
and then we'll
the-
go through them.
Okay, so self-esteem, that means that, and for a lot of women turning like maybe, well,
A big age,
39,
whatever that is. at a
39,
time.
40, 49, 50, on the cusp of a big, change.
Are those are time points
Yeah,
where you're
really,
more likely to cheat.
Women would say, is this all there is? Or, a lot of women with young children, which is interesting. And one woman said to me, how could I not want to have an affair? My husband, I'm so worried about the men in the room. One interview, he said to me, he wears this dirty green robe. He's always in a bad mood after work. And I look in the mirror and I'm turning 40, the kids are asleep, and I say, is this all there is? So it's really about longing for women. And
So that's self-esteem.
That's self-esteem. So they don't feel that good about themselves. So sex is pretty self-explanatory, but in our patriarchal culture, we always hear about how the men could, have sort of tacit approval, went on business trips and for sex. But in truth, in my study, women can do this for sex and they don't need anything more. Okay,
And
empowerment. So women, in terms of working women in America, it's just ascended, and there are more and more opportunities for women. And if you have the same power, because you too travel and have a credit card and can meet people men outside of your marriage, then these women feel empowered by the affair. And then the most poignant part of my study is the love affair.
Love affair with the person on the side?
The triangle. It's real, because there are so many women with whom I've spoken where, we'll think of Madison, what was it called, The Bridges of Madison County. Remember when that book and the movie came out? And my first edition of The Passion for More had come out at the same time, and people were saying to me when I spoke, really all over the country, they were like, how can women do this? We don't believe it, we don't want to hear it. And then I'd say, oh, did you read The Bridges of Madison County? Oh yes, loved it. So she's in the farmhouse. She's really isolated. He comes along. Her husband's like some kind of pig farm or something. No, he went somewhere with the kids. They're really farmers. And this, lovely photographer comes, and she has this love affair, and we all get it. Well, I'm talking about real women in real time, not in fiction. And so the women who fall in love, either because they're out and about, the workplace, they go to a college reunion, they high school reunion, they meet the old boyfriend, they meet someone new. These are really the toughest affairs.
Does it remind you of what you were like when you were at that younger age? Which is
Yes.
something they say about men.
Yes, you're really awakened, but also the women are totally talking about how everything was just fine until they walked across that room at a party or a reunion and met this man, and it changed everything unexpectedly. And that is the toughest, to me, really the hardest affair to manage.
So is the first affair the hardest, the one that sort of
You mean,
breaks the egg and
are there serial affairs?
Well, is
It's
it
not
the,
for everyone.
but
But
the
I'm-
first time, because you've said these vows and you've
Well,
committed or not?
okay, so Maura, I don't think I've ever spoken
Maybe I'm
with a
twins
woman
then.
who says on her wedding day, gee, I wonder when I'll have my first affair, although I was eavesdropping on the train,
Right.
and that was just so shocking to me. But for the most part, especially with the mores and values of our culture, no one wants to do that. And we're also taught, all of us in this room and our children have been taught in happily ever after, despite the statistics. And so, it's very hard to anticipate that you're getting ready for an affair. But women, the price of the good girl is that we think we put one foot in front of the other and we get the result that we expect and hope for. And life has a lot of challenges for women, and an affair is one of them. So I'm really here, I don't condemn, I don't condone, I'm a journalist. I know that this is really a trend in our country. And when the last go round of research, the amount of cyberspace affairs, because of COVID were really striking.
So are more women cheating now?
I believe it. I believe that and that's how I started tonight by saying, we've all kind of have heard or know someone. I think so.
So if they're unhappy in their marriages, why don't they get out of their marriages?
For many reasons. For children, for finances, for for parents. How about the sandwich generation? I've spoken with women who say, I'm 55 years old, I take care of my in-laws, my mother-in-law, I love her. I'm not that happy with my husband, I love my mother-in-law. No, what they're saying is, I can't really leave, I can't leave financially a lot of the time. And also, it isn't that everyone hates their husband in this study. It's that because 70% of the women with whom I spoke, this diverse group, said to me, my husband is so different from my lover. Why would, no one wants the same experience again. They're looking for what they don't have, which is the passion for more. Okay. So that's really.
And tell us about your new book.
Maribelle Shadow. So, this is my fourth novel, and I write under a pen name. Marren was actually my grandma's last name, and my beloved grandma. And so I've taken all my nonfiction. So that includes not just this book on female infidelity, but I've done 3 studies on the role of wife in America. So one book is called The New Wife, The Evolving Role of the American Wife. One book is called Second Wives, The Pitfalls and Rewards of Marrying Widowers and Divorced Men. And the third is called The 9 Phases of Marriage, How to Make It, Break It, Keep It. So I've really been intrigued by the role of wife in America, historically, but mostly in contemporary times. And then you mentioned Tripping the Prom Queen about female rivalry. I did a book years ago, in 2008. Oh my gosh, this book came out. I just want to tell you this story. So I wrote a book I sold it to St. Martin's. They've been my publisher for most of my career. This is my 17th book. And so in 2008, I had a book that came out called Little White Lies, Deep Dark Secrets, The Truth About Why Women Lie. I hated the title, that's what St. Martin's wanted, but the study is really, to me, interesting. And it is about the fact that women keep secrets because they don't want to be judged, and they lie for the cause. Big secrets, like your kid calls you. This is a very popular lie when my children were younger. They'd be like, Mom, where are you? Are you picking me up? And I'd be like, I'm in traffic. Honestly, okay, so little lies. Your friends, because this is such a beautiful shop. Do I look okay in this dress? Should I buy it? Oh, of course, but you think maybe she should buy the other. Like, we're so afraid to offend. And then the deep, dark secrets.
We're not like that here, just so you know. Take it off, I got a better one.
I'm sure that's true based on how you showed us the clothes. That was great. But also, paternity lies, affairs, lies during the downturn again, where women said, oh, my husband, he just decided to become a consultant, but he lost his job. Why do we do all this? Because we're so afraid of being judged. So I'm really fascinated by how
we're afraid of being judged about our husband?
About our lifestyle, about how we fit in with, the community. Women love toxic friends. I kept saying to the women in that study, why don't you just leave an unhealthy friendship? Why? They don't want to lose the group. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to fail. So I'm really interested in what happens to women in our culture. And as I said earlier, the price of being the good girl.
And you've talked about relationships among women in families.
In families, so sisters. Early on I did a book, and I've kept the study going. As a professor, you have to. And the book was called Sisters Devoted or Divided. And that really brings us to Maribelle Shadow. So, and of course there's an affair in that book, no spoiler, but I couldn't resist. But Maribelle Shadow is about 3 adult sisters and their really imperious, bossy mother. She's socially ambitious, which is really interesting to me, why women feel they have to fit in and why it means so much to us. And it takes place in Palm Beach, and I chose Palm Beach. This is my 3rd Palm Beach novel, because I think Palm Beach is really interesting. And the first novel, I just want to say, happened before, we had a president who was in Palm Beach. And so I didn't choose it because of that. But I'm looking at why in such a rarefied, privileged society, women still struggle. They might not struggle financially, but they struggle to be accepted with friends. The hierarchy, I'm very interested in hierarchy in our culture. And so in this story, their mother is Lucinda, and she has 3 adult daughters, and Maribelle is the eldest. I'm also very interested in family systems. So the 3 sisters. So Maribelle is quite an achiever, and within 12 pages of the book, the first 12 pages, Maribel's really handsome, charming, winning, almost like you'd envy that she has this husband. He dies suddenly. And then everything unravels. And it's a suspense story too. Who really was Samuel? Why did he do what he did? And who are we to marry someone like Samuel? Who are we to end up with someone who seemed so perfect and was nothing like that? And then how do women survive? So I'm very interested in survival for women, and that's, the story.
So, Maura, I just want to let everyone know the books are on sale for the author here on the table. These are our QR codes for the Balance Dilemma. Susan, this has been amazing.
We would appreciate if you would follow us on all of these. We appreciate you coming, and following us really helps us build our audience and build the podcast.
And
keep
nail
it going.
files. Men can
Nail
use nail
files?
files too, but
Right.
please take a nail file.
We can open to 1 or 2
Yes.
questions if you'd like, if anyone has a question.
And Susan will sign the books if anyone else.
Go ahead.
I have a question. Of course, Christine asked this gonna be kind of a sports question, but women are less likely to engage in sports. And so I see men and how they relate to each other typically is about sports, right? Women get so deep into each other's business, and that's where I get this sense of the judgment with women, and where men don't have that. They're not sharing that. They're not going that deep.
They don't go that deep.
No.
So, to me, based on all my research and as a professor, we live and will die in a patriarchal culture, and within a patriarchal culture, the man back there, and within a patriarchal culture, it's men don't have to work as hard because what they have is really given to them. And so sports are just easy. Let's put it this way, competition among men is much healthier based on my study, Tripping the Prom Queen, than it is among women. But women, we live in a limited goods society. We do, there's not enough pie. And that's because it's not a matriarchy where you can have every option possible. So in a society like that, women do dig deep, and women do look for a lot, and they hold the bar very high in marriages and also in female friendships. So I think that we can't compare how men would react to anything, from being in a sports team together or watching a game, whatever it is, as it would be for women, although there are all these studies that say that sports for young girls are really very healthy and foster a better sense of competition.
But I think Christy and I would agree that our female friends that are athletes are different than,
Well, a lot of women are athletes now, especially in this room.
But-
and especially young girls. I see.
And they do better. They do better because that's what all the studies say, because they have the options. But
Right.
and it is an option, and it's a way to express yourself, and it's a way to really be invested in something. But I do believe that there are differences in relationships when it comes to male and female approaches completely.
Yeah, but I just think that it's easier for men because they're not exposing themselves. They're just talking about the game, or they're playing the
Yes,
game.
it's not as layered. It's not as layered.
Right.
But then they have to live with everything that they're not sharing or telling anybody too.
Correct.
So, like that, I'm sure that's not great either.
You have a question?
Have all that on the side.
Right,
I think there's a lot of women in the room that are professionals, and we have careers, and the 3 of us have like 8 girls between us. And I look at the next generation, and I see more men staying at home. I see a lot more women leaning in, and I worry, and I'd love your insight, that it's hard to do it all. It's hard to be a mother, it's hard to give birth, it's hard to be the best. And this next generation, like what's happening now is, that's what I'm seeing, so I'm hoping, we always, like balance dilemma, we always try to find the balance, so I worry about this next generation leaning on too much and then maybe doing too much and too much pressure. What do you think about that?
Well, I think, and this really goes to my study for The New Wife, the evolving role of the American wife, and how, you know, because I finished that like 20 years ago at the end, and this was really shocking. A lot of the millennials said, why would I want to be my mother? She hit a glass ceiling. She ended up divorced, right? Because in the 80s, that was the highest rate of divorce in America, because women were out and about, could earn their own money, met other men at the water cooler. You know, we know how it happened. So what's happening now? Well, the one thing is that any child of divorce, male or female, they seem to be much more committed in the relationship to a dual working couple, and I think that's really refreshing. And so even though the second shift is still prevalent, where the studies show even today that if you work all day, maybe you're even the breadwinner or the major breadwinner, that the women come home and still do all the scut work, that they still, make the sandwiches for the, and for lunch tomorrow, and do a wash and read books and get the kids bathed, and that's really unfortunate. But it's up to the women to have the voice to say, this doesn't work, or, this
But I
is.
think you want to do that as a woman, right? Because that's how we were raised. I
Want it, is what you said?
I think a lot of women naturally want that.
To
They
do
feel
all
like-
that
I
with
feel
their
like-
children.
So my kids are in their 20s, so when I didn't work when my kids were little, but many mothers did, and they felt guilty. They felt like they had to come home and do everything, or if they didn't, so.
I feel more responsible, I think, as
I
a woman.
think
You have that
so.
responsibility.
Yeah.
in you, I think.
But it's like, what I'm seeing now, is I see families coming in, what I do for a living, I happen to be in the mortgage business, so when families come in, I see that sometimes more women are making more money than men.
Yeah,
And
a
I see
lot
more men
more
like
now.
like at the park and strolling the kids, so I just wonder the cost, if you've seen that yet, like what it's
You
gonna.
need a new addition, because
Yeah.
now,
I think Elliot also had a question.
But I was just gonna to comment on what you said. I think because I have a group of female friends. I live in Stanford. We're all kind of young moms. I mean, I'm not that young, but we all have elementary school age kids. And what I'm seeing is that you have to start with a precedent with the men. If you have been married 10 years and then you're like, you know what, you need to do laundry and you need to cook dinner, and you need to pack lunch and you need to help out, they're not gonna do it. But if you start, and I have a very good friend who's a nurse, and he works more than she does, but she has 4 kids, she does everything. He won't do anything and she can't change it. She puts the kids to bed, she bathes them, she packs their lunch. He does nothing. Because she allowed it to happen.
there's a quote that we love that said, these habits are like cement, they harden very quickly. So, and they're very difficult
And
to jackhammer away.
very much, very much.
Or as Jose has said to me, not about anything personal, that they're willing to do it when it's easy and convenient, but when it's not, and we have to do it regardless.
But you can't change. I feel like you have the younger generation. You talk about millennials and whatever. I can tell you a whole nother work ethic with millennials. But I think that when you go into a healthy adult relationship and you get married, you have to set these precedents from the beginning. You can't, in our generation, be married and then all of a sudden flip out on your husband 10 years in and say you need to help clean and do laundry and do this. And my husband is a dual partner because I work more than he does, and he's just a little bit different. Like, he does laundry. I actually don't do laundry in my house, but.
It really depends, but I do think you're right that you have to negotiate these relationships. And women didn't do that in decades past.
Annie?
Why not? Why aren't affairs okay?
Why aren't affairs okay?
Yeah, I mean, why are we judging that it's negative? I think it's very.
Yeah, why is
That's
that?
not what I said a minute ago.
I think it's the most empowering thing for women, and go for it. Like, if that's what you want.
I think that's
Like,
really
why are we looking to fit in a box?
And
Like,
create a culture around.
well, I don't know. That's not what I hear from your questions. I'm saying, like, why not accept affairs as normal for women as they are for men, as a way of having a healthy, vibrant livelihood and happiness? and fulfillment.
And a lot of the women in my study are saying that that it's a journey, a self journey, and it really isn't. It's almost like not about the man, the other man, but about what they've learned
Self-fulfillment.
about themselves.
That's what
And actually, when we were talking, Ellie, is that Ellie? When Ellie was talking about how you can't negotiate later, what's interesting about affairs is the only time, because women are so facile at keeping secrets, and I learned that in this study and also in the Why Women Lie study I referenced a little while ago. But what's really fascinating is the women who sit down with their husbands in a departure from the past and say, look, I've been having this affair, and I've learned a lot about myself and about you and about our relationship. I'd like to renegotiate this marriage.
Yeah, I think it's very empowering.
And that is empowering, and that's something that's a departure from the past. Some of them are. Yeah, the women use the affair as a way to understand themselves and to understand what they have and don't have in their marriages. And I think that's really worth noting because a lot of women do it. And as I said, it could just be an affair of the mind, but it's something that doesn't really pass the litmus test, right? So it's an affair.
Your friends do.
I want to look at like different cultures because I think America is a lot different from if you go to Europe or
Oh,
Asia or
yeah.
like I think the reason why we don't have paid family leave or we have, you know, this misogyny in corporate America, pay inequity, all this stuff, because I think our culture is still very patriarchal. And that people don't talk about, but it's the culture that kind of transcends all this stuff. Whereas you go to some other cultures, they just don't have that same patriarchy. There's some, obviously, if you go to Japan or you know,
Right.
there's patriarchy, but here it's alive and well, even if we pretend that it's not.
Well, in my opinion, the only way that it will ever change based on all my research in a capitalistic society is if there's equal pay for equal work. And when there's equal pay for equal work, then everyone will be treated as equals. And
But
it's,
that's law. There's a law that says.
but it's not happening.
So you need more
But it
women in
depends
power.
on the-
That's the bottom
Oh,
line.
I know.
And we
Yeah,
need
law
more women in
says-
power, and they will have more power if they're paid the same, because then they'll be
We need to elevate women. We need to
elevate
all
women.
elevate
I
women.
agree completely.
We
And
need
we're
more
not,
female
we're not there,
entrepreneurs,
we're not there yet. You know, we should have had this is not about Republican or Democrat, but we should have had a female president by now in America. It's just so obvious, it should have happened. So, you know, it is troubling, it's very patriarchal. That's the real problem.
Here's a question.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I'm the only man
a brave
here
man
except for this young
speaking.
man. This is fascinating.
It's like a cheat sheet.
But I want to add something. I lived in France for 18 years. I know quite a bit about what you're talking about. Other societies deal with these issues in other ways. I won't say anymore.
I think that's true. This book, you know,
I
this
need
book
more.
is- No, let me put it this way, this book, you know, I've sold my books in foreign countries, but no one wanted this book in France, no publisher. They don't need it, it's not needed, yes.
I was just thinking, like, you know, he whispered Susan Hillary, and I thought, oh, but she said the deplorables, and then I realized,
She lost the election
Meg
when she
says so
said
much
that.
worse stuff than that.
Really? Who?
Yeah, and all she said was about the deplorables, and that was the entire
Well,
election down
she
the
also
road.
stayed with someone who just cheated on her.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But.
Yes.
I have a quick question. I can't help but think that there's all these affairs going on and all these divorces that happen. Is a human being really meant to be monogamous? I mean, I can't help but think about that.
Longevity is really a factor in this study because we live a long time and women reinvent themselves a lot at different phases and stages. And there is the question, you know, what does forever mean when in 60 years or 50 years? So and that's why the women in their 80s with whom I spoke for this new edition, it was just shocking. But it really says so much about women really feeling like they have a choice.
What do women say in their 80s? Because they can reflect. So what do women say?
A lot of women say that they would have done things differently.
Meaning what, that they would have had affairs earlier, they would have
No,
gotten divorced,
that
they
they
would have.
might not have married the person they did, that they might not have stayed as long. You know, women are reflective in their 80s, but they also really feel entitled in a good way to still have a vibrant life. It's really, it's a good thing. It
Well, I
really
think
is.
we're gonna stop here, and you'll stay, you'll continue, everyone can continue shopping.
Yes, especially for the last blouse that Ellie showed. Ellie, that blouse, like, I really want that.
Thank you so much. She's here with the books. Please follow us on all these platforms. We really appreciate it, and have fun. Thank you so much.